Good day. The German party, the CDU, Angela Merkel's party, which is very much the dominant party at the present time in German politics, has chosen Armin Laschet, the Minister-President of the important German state of North Rhine-Westphalia, to be its leader. Angela Merkel, of course, is still Chancellor, and in reality and in fact, she is, to all intents and purposes, still the de facto leader of the CDU. But she is due to retire in September from German politics, quitting the chancellorship, which she has held for almost 16 years. And Armin Laschet's election to the leadership of the CDU puts him in pole position to take over when Angela Merkel goes. I should say that it is not absolutely definite that that is what's going to happen, but that is what most people expect. So who is Armin Laschet and what does he represent? The first thing to say about him is that he is very much the person that Angela Merkel apparently wanted to succeed her. She wanted Laschet. She did not want the two alternatives, either Norbert Röttgen, who was the leader of the party's left, or perhaps even more importantly, Friedrich Merz, a prominent German lawyer and businessman who is very much the embodiment of the CDU's right. Laschet, like Merkel, is absolutely a person of the dead centre. In fact, he actually said this in his speech to the CDU conference, which I should say virtual conference, which elected him to lead the CDU. I quote his exact words: "We'll only win if we remain strong in the centre of society. We must ensure that this centre continues to have faith in us." In other words, under his leadership, the CDU will not be a right-wing party, at least in its own self-perception, and it won't be a left-wing party. It will continue to be a centrist party, ruling Germany from the centre, as Merkel has done, through a system which Italians, who are accustomed to this sort of thing, called transformismo. The idea is that the party at the centre is able to adjust to moods in the electorate, either in the left wing or a right wing direction. It chooses its coalition partners accordingly. It shifts its policies accordingly. And as a result, it is able to entrench and consolidate itself in power and in effect remain in power, albeit indefinitely. And this has been the theme, the system that Merkel has used as Chancellor, which has made her and kept her Chancellor for so long, and the style of politics which she has conducted with consummate skill. Laschet is setting himself up as the person who is going to continue to pursue that style of politics. I should say that he is the second attempt by Merkel to find an alternative, a successor to herself. Her previous choice, her previous pick, Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer, AKK, as she is known to most people in Germany, was by all accounts and admissions, including her own, a failure in the role of CDU leader, and as a result she had to step down, making the election of Laschet, and the election which Laschet has just won, necessary. Now, I'm going to say straight away that I think that this is not a good outcome, either for the CDU or for Germany. Now, in saying that, I want to just make it very clear that what I've heard about Mr. Laschet as a human being is actually quite favourable. By all accounts, he is a kind and decent and well-intentioned man. I've never heard that he is anything else but that. If there are stories about him that say the opposite, well, obviously people can tell me about them in the thread below this video. However, that doesn't change the fact that I have certain very obvious and clear concerns. Firstly, it's important to say that Mr. Laschet comes to the position, the pole position, at the centre of German politics very much as a leader, a political leader, who has made his political mark in a very narrow and confined area of Germany and of Europe. He is a Catholic. He comes from a coal miners' family. He's born in Aachen, which is one of the westernmost cities in Germany, on the border of, close to the border with Belgium, France, and the Netherlands. He speaks apparently fluent French, and though obviously of working class origins, he is married to Susanne Malangre, who is a member of one of the most prominent families in Aachen. Aachen, which I have visited, is a beautiful, rather sleepy place in some ways, a rather conservative, perhaps not the most dynamic centre either of Germany or indeed of North Rhine-Westphalia, which is a German economic and industrial hub, which includes the Ruhr. Mr. Laschet, as I said, speaks French. He's a devout Catholic. He practiced as a lawyer in the nearby city of Cologne, and he is someone who is known to be on very good and friendly terms with French President Emmanuel Macron. He is in effect exactly the sort of person who you would expect to be thoroughly and entirely committed to the European project, to a Germany fully integrated in Europe, and to be a loyal and devoted supporter of the European Union. I would add, by the way, that his family, his own family, are of Wallonian, which is to say Belgian, in extraction. And if you follow his politics carefully, one thing immediately becomes striking, and that is the extent to which he has been essentially limited in his politics, both to North Rhine-Westphalia and to the area around it, and to certain particular positions or roles which have kept him perhaps from the centre of Germany's economic and political life. He was only very briefly an MP in the federal German parliament, the Bundestag. He has never held ministerial office in Berlin. He's never been a person who has played any role in the economic management, either of his state, except as Minister President, of course, or in any wider function. He has been, for a time, a member of the European Parliament, but it is important to remember that Strasbourg, where the European Parliament is based, Strasbourg and Brussels, are actually not very far from Aachen, where he is based and where he actually lives. So if he wants to see or go to Brussels, it's a short car drive away for him to go there. If he wants to go to Strasbourg, it's not very far either. He is therefore essentially someone whose politics have been conducted in a very narrow and small geographical area of Germany and of Europe. Moreover, though he was chair of the Budget Committee of the European Parliament, which will have given him some experience in finance, overall, when you track the policies, the positions he's held his primary concerns and interests are in social policy. He is not someone who you would turn to run detailed projects, economic projects in Germany, or to micromanage the German economy in great detail. I would also add that this Western Catholic corner of Germany, though it is a return in some ways to the CDU's roots, it's important to remember that previous CDU leaders like Konrad Adenauer, who was the founder and leader of the CDU for many years, as well as Germany's chancellor in the 50s and early 60s, had been mayor of Cologne, and comes from this region. And of course, Helmut Kohl, who was the German chancellor who brought about reunification. He too, like Laschet, was a Rhinelander. It's nevertheless true that this is a style of politics, this very Western, very Catholic, very French-oriented politics, that is more what you would expect from the former West Germany, before Germany reunified in 1989, than from the Germany of today. Laschet is not very experienced or knowledgeable about East Germany. As I said, he's never held a ministerial post in Berlin. I don't get the impression that East Germany and the interests of people in places like Leipzig and Dresden and those sort of places are very known to him. So what can we expect from Mr. Laschet? Well, I mean, he said himself that he wants to continue to pursue Merkel's centrist policies, her centrist line. I would add that one of the things that he's best known for in Germany is his support for Merkel's pro-immigration policies in 2015, which were hugely controversial in Germany. He gave Merkel strong support when she threw open Germany's doors to an influx of refugees from Syria and from the Middle East, and that he's also known as somebody who is on particularly good terms with sections of the Turkish community in Germany. So he is, in effect, someone who self-identifies as continuity Merkel. And that perhaps, to my mind, is a problem, because I think Merkel policies are becoming not just out of date, but actually, in a sense, dangerous. Because taken to the lengths that Merkel has taken them over the last few years, they have created within Germany an atmosphere, a quality of immobilism and stagnation. The result is that though Germany continues to be an extraordinarily strong and stable economy and a very successful country, it is not confronting or facing the many challenges that are building up in Germany itself. It is widely accepted, for example, that Germany has failed to make its mark in the pioneering technologies of the internet and of AI and all the rest. It's very much an economy that relies upon its major industrial achievements and its great industries that were built up over the previous decades. Many say, and I think rightly say, that Germany today is a country where you will find the same industries that dominated Germany 50 years ago. And that in itself is, I think, a disturbing fact. It also is questionable whether a political leader so much associated with one narrow region of Germany and so centrist and loyal to Merkel is really the kind of person to address the mounting challenges that Germany faces within its near abroad. Does he have the imagination or the vision to understand, for example, that mounting problems are now affecting the EU itself. Is he aware of the extent of the political and economic crisis in Italy, for example, where the government seems to be on the brink of collapse? Does he understand that there is also a burgeoning crisis in France, where his friend Emmanuel Macron is facing growing problems and growing challenges? Does Mr. Laschet understand, or is he aware of the extent to which there's even a crisis in the neighbouring Netherlands, where the government has also just collapsed? What is his policy going to be with respect to the political leaders in the East, people like Viktor Orban or Kaczynski of Poland, who are challenging the integrationalist line that Mr. Laschet and his friend, Mr. Macron, seem to want to commit Europe to? What about wider politics beyond that? Is Mr. Laschet going to persist with Merkel's opening to China? Is he going to continue the strange policies of alternatively accommodation and rapprochement, and other times confrontation with Russia, Germany's most powerful partner and sometimes competitor on the European continent? Laschet, incidentally, has spoken, it seems, in favour of maintaining good relations with Russia, and seems to be more inclined to treasure and build on those relations than Merkel herself was. Possibly a fact which reflects Laschet's position as Minister-President of an industrial region of Germany, which has forged strong economic links with Russia, and perhaps also the influence of the towering figure of Helmut Kohl, who also comes from close to this region. But ultimately, we're just going to have to wait and see. My fear and worry is that Laschet is not just going to try and continue Angela Merkel's policies, but that he is actually a true believer in them. In other words, he is not just Merkel, not just continuity Merkel, but actually more Merkel than Merkel was herself. The point about Angela Merkel is that behind the facade of the straightforward, plain-speaking, centrist politician, there was an extremely cunning and effective political calculator, somebody who was gifted in political intrigue and who was at all times fully aware of what she was doing. It seems to me that if Laschet, by contrast, actually believes in these sort of policies that Merkel has followed in a very pragmatic way, then he will actually try to pursue them in a way that is more rigid even than Merkel has done or did. Moreover, if he attempts at this time to pursue a more integrationist policy with respect to Europe, and he's spoken in the past of wanting the president of the European Commission directly elected by Europe's people, and he's also hinted, or at least he did hint at the time of the Eurozone crisis in 2011, that Germany should consider Eurobonds, should consider adopting Eurobonds. I think if he tries to pursue those sort of policies, then he will find mounting criticism and opposition to them within Germany itself, and he might find that his position is far less stable than he might have expected. Merkel always understood how far to go, what point she could go to beyond which criticism and opposition would become too strong. And she always stopped short of going to those sort of places. The other thing about Laschet is his very close relationship with the Green Party, to the point where there's even discussion that he is interested in seeking a coalition with the Greens, and that this might be his preferred choice after the German federal elections, which are coming up soon. Well, in a sense, that would end this tired and exhausted grand coalition of the CDU and the SPD, the Socialist Party of Germany, Social Democratic Party of Germany, which Merkel has led for so long. But again, one has to worry that the Greens and the CDU make uncomfortable bedfellows, with the Greens in particular insisting on energy policies and other policies which cut against the interests of much of German industry, and which might also be opposed to Laschet's wishes, or apparent wishes, for a closer relationship with Russia. I do wonder whether this is a good choice. I have to say that Laschet, kind and decent man though he does appear to be, does come across to me, perhaps rather too much, as a likeable and effective provincial politician, not apparently much of a manager, but not at all the sort of person that Germany needs at a time like this, when it is facing so many challenges around the world and domestically also. Germany needed a break from Merkel, not continuity Merkel, and certainly not Merkelism continued by someone who looks like he might believe in it. Thank you very much for joining me on this program. I look forward to you joining me in my next program. Please also check me out in our main program, the Duran, which I do with my colleague Alex Christoforou. Please also check out his own channel, Alex Christoforou's channel. You'll find links underneath this video. Please also find our various channels on BitChute and Library and Rumble and the rest, or our various other platforms. Support us on Patreon, Subscribestar, and PayPal. And last but not least, come to our shop, buy the wonderful products you will see there, our great t-shirts, our wonderful sweatshirts, our amazing magic mugs, our hats with the flags of many countries. You support us by coming to the shop, and you will be delighted with the wonderful products and things you will find there. And please, I look forward to you joining me on my next program. Thank you very much.